this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on owlscoop.com. You already know.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop, owlscoop.com's podcast, Season 8, Episode 37, and we will get to some famous 37s this week. I feel like we've abandoned the number thing over the past couple weeks, but we've been busy. I'm John DeCarlo, the editor of owlscoop.com. We have the full house back this week. Kyle Gauss, Javon Edmonds, Caden Steele. What's going on, guys?
John, we've been told to come to you with, I don't know if it's a list of grievances or a bargain or whatever, I don't know. But the children would like to know when they make their first appearances on The Scoop. And by the children, I mean John Wislak and Declan Landis.
Whatever the planned date was, push it back 2 weeks for asking.
Yeah.
I will carry that message to them.
Are they back in the studio there right now? Can they hear us?
Yes.
Kyle saying that?
They are in the studio. They cannot hear Kyle saying that. They're in the next room over.
I agree with Kyle. If they need to come talk to us with something, they can come directly to us. They don't need to use you and Caden as pawns in this podcast game here, so to speak. So
that's time to put the big boy pants on, guys. You're about to get the call. You're about to get the September call up. Don't be asking me what number you're going to wear.
Yeah, exactly. They need to realize they need to show a little bit of respect. You guys are going to be moving on to your full-time jobs. And these guys, I don't know if they're trying to undercut you, but like, I love the enthusiasm. But like Kyle said, they got to,
because me and Caden never went to Sam and Dante with such questioning. We just let it happen organically.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Famous number 37s, guys. Like I said, or we did we do 36s and 35s before?
We definitely skipped 36.
Yeah, we got skipped.
Yeah, I think we talked about 35. That was just you and I, right, Javon? We talked about Christian Okoye. 36.
I think I was there for that.
Okay.
Maybe, because I know we didn't say Kevin Durant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Poor Caden. There for that.
Yeah, 36, Shaquille O'Neal with the Celtics is all I got for you.
You're very good. You remember like the off-brand numbers, like the tail end of someone's career numbers. You were
because they look so wrong in those numbers that it's like you can't help but remember them.
Yeah. Brian West, 36.
Oh, we're 36, yeah.
Jerome Bettis from the Steelers.
The bus.
Yeah. Now, who wore 37?
I wrote down in our script, Sean Alexander and Lester Hayes are the two that come to mind for me.
Sean Alexander came to mind. The best fantasy fullback of all time.
Best fantasy fullback of all time.
Is that Marcel Reese or Mike Tolbert?
Tolbert. I don't know if you call Tolbert a fullback or just like a fat running back that's still running back. Cardinals, John. Notice I didn't say Arizona Cardinals. Phoenix Cardinals. Larry Centers. Or 37.
Centers. You were playing fantasy football when Larry Centers was playing?
I was very into stats. I appreciated the fact that he could receive out of the backfield. I wasn't playing in like 1978, but he was still around to like 03, 04 with the Patriots.
Huh. Good call.
The best college running back of all time, maybe, if you follow awards. Doak Walker.
Wow. That's a good call.
That's about it.
What about the guy who created the Lambeau Leap, Leroy Butler?
Oh, that's
Leroy. That's such a wonderful name. Oh, hold on. Deion Sanders wore 37 with the Ravens.
With the Ravens. Oh, okay. We just with that franchise. I thought we weren't allowed to talk about the Ravens.
Yeah, we weren't. They're on like a don't talk about them list.
That's when he had been retired.
Them.
He had been retired for like 5 years, right?
Yeah, he didn't want to come back and take Chris McAllister's number, so he wore his age of 37 while he was a decent nickel corner.
Yeah.
There's one more guy in that division, Rodney Harrison, wore 37 with the Steelers.
Yeah, he did.
Ron Artest.
Yeah, it's the Patriots.
Patriots.
Ron Artest wore 37.
Yes, Ron Artest. Well, Meta World Peace at that point when he switched to 37.
No, I think World Peace was 15.
Was it?
Yeah, I think Kyle might be right on that one.
I thought it was the other way around.
Now he's got a different name, right? It's like Meta Artest.
He's Meta Sanderford Artest.
15 with the Bulls, 15 with the Pacers, 37 with the Lakers, and then back to 15 with the Lakers.
Okay, so you're right. 15
and then 51 with the Knicks, because why not?
Yeah.
We're on top of our numbers game. Good numbers talk. we needed that. It's been intense over the last few weeks. A lot of breaking news, a lot of news that we're breaking. Scale the layers back and talk some fun numbers.
Hey, let it breathe.
Yeah, exactly. The Scoop, again, is now brought to you all by Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. If you have been injured while on the road or highway and the crash was someone else's fault, the insurance company will not be on your side. You need us, Temple Law grads, who will fight hard to get the compensation that you deserve. We only get paid if we win. In Pennsylvania or New York, call us today at 215-261-7359. That's 215-261-7359. And you can find them on the web at greenspans-law.com. So a ton of fun stuff to get into this week's episode. As you all know, Adam Fisher was introduced as Temple's new men's basketball coach Wednesday afternoon at a press conference at the Fox Giddis room of the Liacouras Center, where they have pretty much all their press conferences, with the exception of Aaron's, which was done pretty well when he was introduced, and they did the whole thing at McGonigal. But Adam Fisher introduced yesterday. We're going to be talking a lot about that. I know that we've been very basketball-centric over the past few weeks, but we do have the Cherry and White game to talk about, some more spring football updates for you. Pretty full mailbag to get to on the football and basketball side as well. So, but getting back to Adam Fisher, thought he nailed the press conference yesterday. I think that was the general consensus. Obviously, games are not won and lost in press conferences, but for a fan base that's really just starving for some fresh energy, a new tone of the conversation about the future of the program. Again, I thought he nailed it yesterday. We got the chance to, of course, talk to him, talk to Michael Huger. We got a ton of coverage for you. Had a couple of stories up yesterday, of course. Javon was able to talk to Chris Clark. Ramir Vaughn was able to talk to Michael Huger, who was on his staff. As we first reported, Michael Huger, Chris Clark, and Bobby Jordan will be his 3 bench assistants. Initially, yesterday, Adam Fisher said, well, I can't leak my staff information just yet, but the guys may or may not be sitting over there. And he motioned to his left, and then he answered questions anyway, starting off with Javon's question about Chris. And so those guys will be the 3 bench assistants. Do want to acknowledge we did initially report, and with good sourcing, I will say that Matt Brady, the former St. Joe's assistant, Oklahoma assistant, where was he the head coach? Siena and
JMU. James Madison and Marist.
Why did I say Siena? Yeah, James Madison and Marist. Really trusted our sourcing on that, but something along the way happened, and he's not going to be joining. It's not going to be joining Adam Fisher's staff, but the 3 bench assistants are set: Michael Huger, Chris Clark, and Bobby Jordan. Again, Ramir talked to Michael Huger. You'll be able to check out that story. You'll be able to check out Javon's story on Chris Clark. But let's get into this. I mean, Kyle, I know you weren't able to be there yesterday, but just general takeaways. What'd you think of it?
I thought it went about as well as it could have been. I could have gone for a lot of different ways. I thought Arthur Johnson was good. I thought Adam Fisher came across as very genuine, which is like good, because like if you're trying to pretend to be someone you're not, and like this super cool suave Rick Pitino guy, like that's not you. I thought he had answers to pretty much everything that he could have at the time. All that being said, like that doesn't buy you much, right? Like you had a good press conference. There's a lot of people that win press conferences. Jeff Collins won the press conference. Aaron McKee won the press conference. Like it was a different type of press conference, but it was a good press conference. In the end, like he's still a guy that's inheriting a roster that has 5 scholarship players right now. So like I think
6 technically, right?
Who am I missing?
Stanford would be the 6th.
Oh yeah, well he's not here yet. So 5 currently. I know he hasn't asked out. I know he's not planning on asking out, but like they got 5 scholarship guys kind of like in the program right now. And yeah, in 6 weeks, 2 months, they'll have 6. Hopefully they have more than 6 in 2 months. But I think right now, like for all the goodwill that press conference bought you, like they need a win, and they need a win quickly. They need whether it's keeping somebody out of the portal, like coming back, whether it's getting a recruit, whether it's getting somebody to follow from Penn State, like that was my biggest takeaway. It's like, okay, you checked the box, you got an A- on the press conference, and now it's on to the next exam. Like, I think so far in the week since Adam Fisher has been hired, everything has gone the way you would want it to go, except for maybe not getting, Matt Brady or DJ Irving, but otherwise everything's going well. So it just continued the positivity on my end.
Vaughn,
I'm a very positive guy.
Yeah.
I said this to a few people yesterday. I do like how much camaraderie this new staff has. Fish, Clark, Huger, Jordan, all four of them go back and have a lot of respect for each other and their work. They seem to enjoy each other. So happy for Chris Clark to survive his second coaching change and be under his third head coach as an assistant.
In
Great guy.
fairness, the first one wasn't like he was out in the wilderness. Like he
Yeah.
was operating as like McKee's assistant for like the last year of Dumpy's era. But yeah.
Still some staying power nonetheless. Yeah.
It does make you say, you hope that assistants like Jimmy Finnerty and Monte Ross, find something pretty soon.
Monte Ross is the new head
Monte's
coach in
now-
NCAA.
He got A&T, yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So I guess it's Jimmy that we're waiting for now.
Which sounds like that might be brewing a little bit too. So
yeah, friend of the podcast who was always great to speak to. So there's that part. It's good to see Zion Stanford in attendance. Everything that we've heard about Adam kind of, I guess, checked out. But as I was telling people, what you do on the press conference is great. It's mostly performative. Not saying that he's not genuine or anything, but a win is technically, a win in the win column in the months of November, December, January, and February. And then hopefully for fans, the month of March, the important one. So we'll see what goes down in November, but so far, so good. Well, actually, not even before then. My report card really starts with the portal. Can you get Jamil Brown to Temple? He's in the portal. You recruited him at Penn State. He's a Philly guy. Temple fans are going to be knocking at your door for him. Can you get Zach Hicks or Hyseer Miller or Jamil Reynolds out of the portal? Jamil looks like he's not going to. Caleb Battle, we know that's it. Damian Dunn's gone. Battle and Reynolds most likely are a package deal down at UCF, from what I'm hearing. So yeah, can you get Zach Hicks and Hyseer Miller back? Kyle, we're hearing conflicting reports. Share your expertise on this one.
I'm trying to avoid throwing shit at the wall. So no, I'm not. I'm hearing something different than that, but it's fine. To be honest, this sounds terrible, but like, my job is just, have they left? I think they've left. I kind of move on from them. Like, it sounds terrible. They were nice guys. But yeah, I wouldn't expect either to be in Temple uniform. Although from what I'm hearing, one of those, despite maybe putting out a top list, might not have completely written Temple off, but if I was a betting man, that's a no-go.
But yeah, that too. But yeah, all that good jazz. We'll see what happens on the recruiting trail and on the floor.
And in case you guys missed it, Caden did a really cool story on Adam Fisher for the Philadelphia Inquirer with just quotes and insight from Micah Shrewsbury and Hakeem Poplar, who's Wooga Poplar's father, and then Rick Perez, who was Lonnie Walker's high school coach at Reading High School. And of course, Adam recruited Lonnie Walker out of Reading High School, got them to Miami, really helped build that roster that was in the Final Four. Caden, I wanted to just have you give our listeners some insight, like take us into your reporting process there. That was a good read and a fun read. Those stories are fun to read when someone is drafted or someone's hired and you don't get their voice into it, and it's the voices, I should say, of other people. What was it like to report on that story? What did you take out of it?
It was fun, especially talking to Wooga Poplar's dad and learning about just how special the connection between Wooga and Adam Fisher was, and him having such of an influence. And it was just such a consistent theme, talking to local coaches and AAU coaches, high school coaches, even Michael Shrewsbury, talking about that relationship builder aspect. And I think the one part, and we talked about the press conference, it could have even been higher in my story, is the part where he does anything to connect with the athlete. And he took Lonnie Walker, the fourth, to yoga sessions and like connected with his parents. And like Rick Perez talked about, like, my favorite quote, he's a guardian of the game, talking about just how like unique Adam Fisher is when he comes into like a practice, and he doesn't make it known that he's there. He doesn't make you accommodate them. And like, I thought there were just so many neat details, just learning about just like how all these coaches have so much respect about him. Brandon Williams of Philly Pride talked about how like 8 years ago, he was working just like a regular punch the clock job, a 9 to 5, didn't have a ton of job. And Adam Fisher went out of his way to meet him at a Panera Bread. And most of the experiences, like subphrasing a little bit with other college coaches, he knows it's like a sales pitch. It's, it's not a lot of, truth behind it. They're trying to get his players, but you could tell it's like the first time that Adam Fisher was truly genuine. So I think just hearing all those different stories was so cool, and just overall, it was a fun process to get. Michael Shrewsbury, he definitely seems like a very genuine coach, and I think Notre Dame did a good job of getting him. So
Kyle perked up when you
Panera
mentioned
Bread.
Panera.
Panera
Yes.
Bread
How did I know?
formerly called the St. Louis Bread Company.
What?
Yeah, when they
That's
went
an actual
national,
thing?
they were like, "Whoa, St. Louis is a garbage town. We can't make this like our brand." So it became Panera Bread.
Did you know that, or did you just look that up now?
I knew that. No, I legitimately knew that.
You sound like the NFL trashing on St. Louis right now.
Yeah, St. Louis is what it is. If Kurt Warner's listening, I'm sorry, but
Well, so anyone from St. Louis that's listening, your guy Jason Tatum's going to get the Sixers out of the playoffs. So,
if anybody from
you
St.
have
Louis
that
is
to rub in
listening,
Kyle's
if anybody
face.
from St. Louis is listening, get your rotary phone going. Call me to complain. We'll talk about.
Don't do that. Deuce Roberts and his family may be listening. We got to support the guys we cover.
They're closer to Kansas City, though, right? From where he grew up.
Yeah, I think so.
Lee Summit or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
I think
May
so.
have cousins in St. Louis. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm sure. But
We do have, and of course, if you go to owlscoop.com, you can listen to all the audio from yesterday's press conference. Like I said, we'll have much more for you from that press conference in the coming days. A lot of coverage to come. A couple of clips that we want to play for you here. And again, a lot of you were able to tune in if you weren't there in person. If you were able to tune in at owlsports.com and watch the stream of the press conference, of course, you heard Mitch Morgan speak, you heard Arthur Johnson speak, you heard Adam Fisher speak, of course. And then in these press conferences, it's customary to have these breakout sessions where reporters can ask follow-up questions and stuff like that. One clip we'll play for you here. I was talking to Adam. I asked him about just the challenges of becoming a first-time head coach now when the game has changed so much over the last 2, 5, 10 years. There are opportunities on one hand for the players, but a lot of challenges for the coaches in terms of recruiting and re-recruiting your players who end up in the portal, name, image, and likeness, embracing the challenges that come from that. And Adam just talked about why would I fight change, talked about how his time at Penn State prepared him for that. So here was his answer to my question when I asked him about that.
I think you have to accept it. Why fight the change? So I think we've accepted it. When I got to Penn State, 7 guys went in the portal. We had 4 players left. So I've been able to see it, and see how to build it in a quick time. I don't want this to take long. I'm not here for 5, 6 years. It's not that at all. We want to win right away. So I think that experience at Penn State, having to deal with the portal and NIL, has really prepared me for this moment.
All right, so that kind of gives you some insight into Adam Fisher's mindset in terms of why he wanted the job and why. I mean, I think overall, if you're the type of fan who wanted a fresh perspective, wanted a younger coach who is ready to kind of embrace all this stuff, that's about what you'd want to hear. Again, as we've been saying, it's good to win a press conference, but in the future, obviously, you have to get some recruiting wins, some portal wins, and win some games. Another clip we're going to play for you here is from yesterday. Arthur Johnson, Temple's athletic director, talking about his conversation with Jim Larrañaga and his time coaching with Adam Fisher. And he mentions here that as they were preparing for their Final Four game, Elite Eight game, excuse me, not Final Four game, Elite Eight game against Texas, he took the time to make a call on Adam Fisher's behalf, and that was a big part of Arthur Johnson's decision-making process here. And here's a part of that conversation from yesterday.
Also heard from some coaches that he worked with. Coach Larrañaga called me the day that they were playing Texas, the right to go to the Final Four. After we traded some jokes about I was not cheering for him that night because I know people at Texas, but that really meant a lot for him to take his time getting ready to play, to go back to the Final Four in 22 years, for him to take time to call. I also heard from some other people that I know in the basketball world. I asked them to reach out, and I kept getting positive feedback.
Coach Larrañaga really sealed it and put it home when he just talked about, yes, he played a huge role in developing guys as well, and he understands the game, and talked about his ability to also make adjustments in game.
So we'll jump into the mailbag here, because again, a lot of you guys have questions that would, like I said, over the past couple of weeks, otherwise kind of just set the agenda for us otherwise, and we want to get right to the questions that you guys have and get to what you want to know from us. The first question from the basketball mailbag, and these are all from subscribers, with the exception of one text question we got. I can't use the term text board because that's a 97.5, the Fanatic term, but again, one of our loyal listeners, Pat Egan, texted us a question that we'll get to a little bit later on in the mailbag. But the first one comes from the screen name Temple J. Can we get information on the progress of NIL, goals, coaches' involvement, and the involvement of former athletes? In terms of goals and fiscal goals, you'd have to ask the people at the Tough Fund about that. But to answer your question about coaches' involvement in NIL, we'll play this clip for you here. And again, if you're a Temple fan that wants to know if they just hired a head coach that is serious about getting behind name, image, and likeness and doing what he can, I think you'll like this answer.
Yeah, it's something that we have to work on and work with. We need some people. We're going to meet with some people here soon. It's definitely something that's everywhere in college basketball and college athletics. So not just specifically here, but I was confident. I brought it up during the interview process. But I also mean it. I don't want guys that just want NIL to be here. But it is going to play a role in guys. So we've got to make sure we're competitive. And I believe with our leadership that we are going to be competitive in that field.
All right. Second question here from the screen name Esther Boyer. Can you give your thoughts on what went wrong with the Aaron McKie era? It is arguably our most successful basketball alum. How do you see him remaining part of the program and seen in Temple history? So the first question first, what went wrong with the Aaron McKie era? I'll tip this over to you guys first before I chime in on this. I mean, obviously, good question. 4 seasons of
We've answered it like 50 million times, though. Yeah.
What's that?
I feel like
50,000,001.
Yeah, I feel like we've
50
answered it 50
million
million times. But we love pleasing our listeners.
I mean, for now, taking it, again, we've been kind of caught up in the coaching search. When you do take a step back from it, what do you think went wrong?
I think the one thing that stood out from kind of going back to my story from the Inquirers was talking to Lonnie Diggs from Math, Civics, and Sciences.
The Mighty Elephants.
The Mighty Elephants, yeah. And he talked about, and I asked him a question about Adam Fisher and his recruiting because, I mean, obviously he knows him from, Wooga getting recruited and just that connection the two have. And he mentioned kind of like subphrasing how, it's kind of been a problem at Temple when it comes to like building that connection with local recruits. And that's just, was his perspective, and maybe other coaches feel differently, but he felt like there wasn't that rapport necessarily between Temple staff and kind of building those deeper connections with the kids who were in the city getting recruited. So I think maybe that part, they weren't able to land, some of the better recruits from the city. And I know that might be tough because, a lot of them might want to go outside and have different opportunities, but they weren't able to keep a lot of talented players within their own backyard. And Adam Fisher is a guy that, Rick Perez, when I talked to him, said he's done that for 10 years, and I don't think Temple is able to do that. And 2, we just seen this team over the last 4 years with Aaron McKie. They were, on all 4 seasons, I don't think they were ever able to, to develop an offensive identity. Mm-hmm. Every single year, I thought it was an issue. Zach Hicks couldn't really find a role. Brendan Barry, I know Javon talks about that one all the time. They couldn't really incorporate him. They never had enough scoring. I feel like they were too reliant on Caleb Battle and Damian Dunn to play hero ball or have a game where they could go off for 30 to help you win, but they never had a consistently, good offense that can move it around and get everyone involved. And I think that was really their downfall because I thought defensively they played good, over the last few seasons, but you can say, defense wins championships, but at the end of the day, college basketball, you got to score. And I just don't think they were ever able to score enough. They never really, developed those guys. And I feel like there's a few guys, that never took that next step. Zach Hicks, being one of them, although he seems like he still has a lot of potential. Julia White never really developed offensively. And maybe some of this is that, fans and other people overvalued what they were going to be. But I think player development was another issue. Like your job as a coach is to develop these guys, and they just never really panned out the full, to reach their ceilings, and it hasn't happened yet. So
here's what I'll say to that. Would they have been better if they had kept Stevie Mitchell and Eric Dixon at Temple? Sure, right? Sure. Those are starting guys for NCAA tournament level teams, whatever. I hate buying the argument of, they weren't able to get good enough players when you're watching their entire roster. Jamil Reynolds is could go to Kansas, go to UCF. Caleb Battle is going to go to Kansas, UCF. Damian Dunn's going to get 6 figures of NIL money and go to an ACC or a Big E school. Nick Jourdain, a guy who struggled to stay in the rotation at Temple, just transferred to the conference champions. clearly they were able to get talent into this program. And Caden, by no means am I coming at you with this. I think it's just like that's kind of become what people have been echoing. Like, oh, they just weren't able to get talent. Yeah, they were. They had this last year's team was a very talented team. They had talent on the roster. The question is, why didn't it click? I think a lot of it was maybe that locker room wasn't as strong as they thought it could be. They got like whenever they get punched in the mouth, they would crumble for 4 games, and they would take them a while to kind of straighten it out. Maybe certain players were bad influences on that locker. Did they have some bad luck? Absolutely, they had some bad luck. Like Caleb Bell going down last season, like while he was playing the best ball of his life up to that point, was a bad stroke of luck. Like, but in the end, I think it was a combination of off the court stuff, them not being able to forge a strong enough like culture and identity to kind of overcome that off the court stuff, and the lack of an offensive identity solely falls on the coaching staff. Yeah. But as for just like, oh, they couldn't get guys in the program, I just don't agree with that.
Yeah. Javon, anything?
I also don't give a shit if people are from Philly. Like, I don't care. I don't care if the player is from Philly that's scoring 22 points a game, or if he's from Missouri, or if he's from New York. Like, I don't care. And I think that's less important now than it was in like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s when you're watching the Atlantic 10 on Comcast Sportsnet. Like, everything now is global. Everything now is national streaming. Players are moving around like it's free agency. I don't care as much of where a player is. And then AAU coaches love to like chime that, like, oh, they need to really keep the kids home. And it's never a two-way street.
Rarely, I guess we would say. No, I agree with that. I mean, this was their, and I think any of the coaches on that staff would tell you this was their year, and they just flat out didn't get it done. They had the pieces, and I think Kyle touched on a lot of the key points there. It was chemistry. Caden mentioned a lack of offensive identity. All that stuff is true. I mean, they were truly, truly, truly capable of beating anybody and losing to anybody. I mean, it's one of the more unique seasons I've ever covered. I mean, it is kind of wild to think that we are mere weeks removed, and I'm not, of course, ignoring the Maryland Eastern Shore loss and the Wagner loss, but we're not that far removed from them going on the road and beating Houston. And then just another thing too that undid
I want to throw something.
What's that?
I want to throw something in about that Houston game. Good win against a clear-cut top 25 team in the country. However, I think March proved that at no point in time this year was Houston actually worthy of a number 1 seed, actually the best team in the country. That Memphis game, bad taste. The way they went out in the tournament, bad taste.
They were banged up.
And a lot of people are jumping on Bob Huggins for his comments about Houston, but he's right. You're not running through the American Athletic Conference anymore. You're going to a Big 12 whose worst 2 teams are Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, where if you put them in any other Power 6 conference, they're getting into the tournament. You put them in the American, they're winning that conference. So Houston's going from that weak-ass conference schedule they were playing to that down there in the Big 12. We're just going to change how we view that program a lot. And we will see how their non-conference schedule goes. I wouldn't be shocked if it starts getting very easier because of who they have to play in the Big 12 tourney, and they need to maintain their reputation as a false powerhouse.
Yeah, but
so with that being
what
said,
the hell are we talking about?
I don't know what that has to do.
With that being said, I'm coming around the corner here. With that being said, the Houston win was good. However, not as good as people think.
They beat
Virginia. And I wrote the story on it for the Temple News. I said at the time, it's not as big as people think because the Cougars beat themselves way more than the Owls beat the Cougars.
I think you're being way.
So I'm not going to keep holding on to that win.
I think you're being a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian.
They
beat Virginia. They beat Virginia. They beat Virginia at Virginia. They beat Oregon at Oregon. They beat St. Mary's on a neutral court. They lost to Alabama by like 3 points. Like for you to pretend that they were just this paper tiger that all of a sudden got once they got to the tournament, like that's not true. They were banged up once they got to the NCAA tournament. Yes, they lost to Memphis. They're still won like 65 games over the last 2 years. They are a marquee program.
I just feel like
was it all of a sudden like, hey, Temple's all of a sudden the number 2 team in the nation? Like, no, I think it was more reflective of like any team in the nation this year can be beat, and Temple had the talent to beat them on the road in a hostile environment.
I just feel like Houston got soft once conference play began. That's
But
it.
that
They
had
lost a little bit of dog in them.
Well, they
They went 17-1 in conference.
Yeah, that shows you how bad the conference is. Memphis was the only team worth giving a damn about this year.
Yeah,
I think it's soft if they won every game but the Temple game.
I don't think so. I think too. Again, did the American put 4 or 5 teams in the tournament? No, but the top half of the league was still pretty good.
John, what in what year has Ron Hunter's Tulane team learned the meaning of defense? Yeah, they'll score 70, but they'll give up 76.
Yeah, right. We are
UCF, Johnny Dawkins can't put together consistency.
We are so far off track. We are so far off track here. The bottom line is they went down on the road, however they did it, and outmuscled the number 1 team in the country on the road. That's a huge deal. What I was going to say is another thing that plagued them in the McKee era is poor finishes down the stretch, which also goes back to coaching. My thing with Aaron, and again, people are going to think that I say this for the sake of saying it as a reporter. I still think Aaron is a hell of a coach. I think Fran Dunphy's a hell of a coach. I think that Aaron ultimately, for what he really wants to do, probably would have been a very, very good college head coach in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. And I think that sometimes former NBA guys can run out of steam at the end when they want it to be the way they want it to be. And I think he worked really hard. I think he knows the game. But again, ultimately, a lot of that stuff, the player development, the poor finishes, that ultimately means that you as a staff could not figure it out at the end. And I think Kyle brings up a really good point. Again, they had good enough talent for the guys that are in the portal right now, and the options they have or potentially have shows you that they have the pieces that they needed, and they just couldn't get it done. And another thing I think we talked about during the year, on one hand, we'll say, well, you can't win things through a press conference, but there were times throughout the year, and I forget, Javon, if you said it or Kyle, if you said it, like that locker room maybe it wasn't as strong as it could have been, or it was fractured at the very least. I mean, there were a lot of, I don't want to say leaks coming out of that locker room, but a lot of like, we lost our focus, we're not together right now, we're not this, we're not that, stuff that you.
When Zach Hicks and Hasir Miller, when Zach Hicks and Hasir Miller, the 2 most quiet guys on the team, had a press conference that pretty much called out everything wrong with that locker room, I knew things were going downhill, because those are the last 2 you expect that from. So that was interesting. I wouldn't want to throw in there before you get back to your point, because you made a good point with the NBA guys and, coaches wanting things to be the way they are. It's worth noting that Aaron himself walked away, which is something we're seeing in the landscape of college basketball right now. I'm not saying Aaron McKee is Mike Krzyzewski. I'm not saying he's Roy Williams. I'm not saying he's Jay Wright. But those 3 are examples of guys seeing the direction of college basketball, where it's heading, and it's like, you know what? It's just not for me anymore. I'm getting out. And you look at Aaron, his basketball track record, played at Simon Gratz, was coached by John Chaney, was coached by Larry Brown, coached by Phil Jackson, learned how to coach from Fran Dunphy. There ain't much new school you're going to mix into that. Like, those 4 guys they epitomize old school basketball.
Yeah.
Don't you leave out Doug Collins in this.
Yeah.
And Dougie Collins. I'll throw Dougie Collins in there. So it's like those guys epitomize old morals, old principles, old fundamentals, old everything. There's only so much new school you're going to be able to implement into Aaron, which is part of the reason I attribute to him stepping away and like, you know what? I'm better suited as an advisor. I can help the program better off the bench than on the bench, essentially pulling a Brad Stevens. And I mean, he assisted with the search. He's still around. He's very much a part of the program. I'll say this again for the last time, like I've been telling everybody on Twitter. I put it in stories a few times by now. Like, that special advisor role, to me, I don't think that's made up. I think that is really, he might not get paid for it after this year, but Aaron McKee is always going to be around Temple, and he's always going to be a phone call away for Arthur Johnson.
He may not have that title after this year. The second that contract runs out, he might not have access to the building anymore. But yeah, it's fine. I honestly, Javon, I really appreciate you like dying on this hill, to be quite frank. Like I legitimately appreciate like you're just going to bat for this, because I was like, oh, I don't know if I'd be so steadfast in that. Like we don't know yet. We're just hearing what people are saying. It's one
We'll
thing.
see. Yeah, you will definitely see. But it every indication to me seems like, no, this is genuine.
So yeah, Javon essentially answered the second part of that mailbag question there. Next one here, the screen name is Constitution Al. How has this hire been received by former players? I think generally speaking, the fan base is pretty excited, but I'm curious how those closest to the program feel about it. I mean, I think you could see a lot of positive feedback on Twitter. Will Cummings was tweeting about it, saying, see y'all in the summer, love this energy. Deontay Christmas tweeted about it. Mark Williams tweeted about it.
Deontay Christmas wants to be on the staff.
He does.
As he told us on the scoop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Texted with Shiz a little bit, our newest subscriber. Shiz is great. Shiz was texting back and forth with me. He said, I like his energy. We haven't had someone like that before, so I think he will be good. I'm glad that he kept Chris Clark on the staff too. Good connection to the alumni. Still think it might be hard for him to keep some Philly guys to stay home. Interested to see who stays from last year's team, but overall, really impressed. And then we'll play this clip for you here too. I had a chance to talk to Lynn Greer yesterday near the end of the press conference. I was able to catch up with Lynn. Al Scoop subscribers can hear that entire interview in the coming days on the site. But we'll play this clip. Lynn got there, toward the end of the presser, was telling me, hey, I just got here. But here's a clip from my conversation with Lynn where he's weighing in on the hire. I mean, as a former player, what do you think of the hire? I mean, you've been in the area. Your son's still playing in the area. What did you think of the press conference today?
Well, I'm a lifelong Owl, man. So whoever's in this position, just here to support, be a resource, be a mentor to the guys. So I'm happy for Adam, man, and just want to see Temple succeed.
What is it like? I mean, when people refer to when they say Temple has to get back to what it was before, you were part of what it was before. And Dolph got them to the tournament, but you guys were getting to the Elite Eight. People talk about you as one of those memorable players. I know the game has changed, but what do you think? Obviously, beyond the wins, the losses, and the recruiting, what's missing? What does Adam have to recapture here?
Just a winning culture. It was times that we lost games. We didn't have such successful seasons, but our culture was winning, our effort was winning, and in the long run, the wins added up.
All right, so again, just a reminder that you can hear that entire interview if you're an owlscoop.com subscriber. Lynn and I talked about a bunch of other stuff, his memories of playing at Temple, and one of the things we talked about is he's one of those guys from that team when people say Temple has to get back to what it was before. The last time Temple was making serious runs in March, particularly that 2001 team that went to the Elite Eight, Lynn was part of that team. So a lot of good stuff there from Lynn. Appreciate him making some time for me yesterday. The next question here, the screen name is what TU. Is there a timeline / date with the transfer portal that you expect or required by the NCAA that will have this roster more concrete with who will be on it? Fisher said at the presser that they've been on the recruiting trail already. Would you expect any commitment soon? Great coverage as always.
Real quick,
Arthur said that
that line about the recruiting trail is that's just him saying we've been calling people a lie. It's been a dead period since he was hired. He hasn't been out. He was at the Final Four to support Miami, and then since then, he's been back.
Yeah, and I was going to point out, Arthur said that Aaron McKee was doing some recruiting also. I guess that's hey, Zach, hi, Sir, Nick.
Well, I think there was a week or two after Aaron was dismissed / resigned / whatever that it was still an open period. It's he could have been talking, but since Fisher's gotten the job, he's not allowed to go on the recruiting trail.
Would there be do you expect any commitments soon? Yeah, I think in the coming days we'll start to hear some news about portal additions and maybe even some portal retentions. So yes, I would say so.
I think he's at what point in the summer, or whatever, would you start to think if you have a concrete idea? Right. I'd say probably May-ish, June. I mean, Jameel Reynolds didn't join the roster until end of April or early May last year. I would think with the calendar being the way it is, the calendar being the recruiting calendar, not the Gregorian calendar, I would say you would start to see visits in the next couple of weeks. They have a lot of open scholarships. They have guys that they want to keep. They have guys that are going to leave. They're going to have a lot of guys in and out of campus over the next 3-4 weeks. Because it started today's Thursday. By the time you guys listen to this, it'll be an open period again. That only lasts this weekend. And then it's nothing during the week. And then it's open for 2 weeks and it's back and forth. And you start getting into Philly Live territory. And it's gonna be a hectic time for Adam Fisher for a couple months.
Yep. Next question comes from the screen name Villanova fan 35. What are the chances that Damian Dunn stays? What would they have been if McKee was retained? I barring a minor miracle, Dame's gone. Everything we're hearing is that he's
0.1%.
Yeah. What would they have been if Aaron McKee was retained? I think if Aaron McKee was retained, I think Damian Dunn probably would have stayed. I think they probably would have found a way to figure it out.
75%.
Yeah. Next question from Kaleem.
Nick Jourdain comes back if Aaron stays too.
Think so?
I think so.
Nick Jourdain, of course, and again, back to Kyle's point, Nick Jourdain has has very much shown some flashes of his potential. Penny Hardaway thinks he's good enough to be at Memphis. He committed to Memphis out of the portal. So
apparently he said he's ready to rain threes down over there.
I don't know if that's such a
Nick, no.
Yeah, like buddy, you had 2 years. They gave you 2 years to try to rain threes down.
Is Nick trying to claim he didn't have a green light here? Because I've seen Nick Jourdain shoot a lot of threes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like buddy, you had the green light up here. It didn't go. You're about to be the athletic, long arm, long legs, 6'8", small ball center. Just be ready to protect the rim, catch some lobs, set some screens.
Which hell, if your goal was to just shoot threes, maybe you should have waited a couple more days. Adam Fisher just wants you to shoot threes. So you would have been able to shoot 7, 8, 9 threes a game here if you stuck around.
Yeah, I mean, he told Manuel Cuomo he's going to have to start shooting them. So, man.
Which was funny. Yeah.
We'll see if he keeps that mentality by the time November comes.
The next question here, the screen name is from Kaleem Goodman. Thoughts on the staff and who else would you try to hire? What do you think about Fisher's mindset to becoming a high 3-point shooting team, which Bob just mentioned? Thoughts on the staff? So far, I think it's a staff that makes a lot of sense. Michael Huger, a guy that will probably be his associate head coach. They work together at Miami, has 8 years of head coaching experience in Bowling Green. He's got recruiting connections in New York, where he grew up. He's got recruiting connections all over the country. Chris, I think it's a big deal to get Chris to stay. I understand why some fans might say, hey, you got to wipe the slate clean, start over again. Chris is institutional knowledge for you. And I think it'll be an exciting thing for Chris. I think that Chris, I thought it was interesting that Shiz said we haven't had someone with that type of energy before. And, I think that Aaron McKee and Fran Dunphy are a little bit more similar than people would think. I think we've been saying that for years. Adam Fisher comes across as the type of guy who is saying, I don't mean this in any sort of like mischievous type of way, but we'll do whatever it takes to win. He's going to be a forward-facing guy, a high-energy guy. Let's try this type of guy. And again, that's not to imply that Aaron and Fran don't know the game very well at a high level, but this could be a good shot in the arm for Chris. I think Chris is going to maybe get some more opportunity here to have more of a say in the offense, to get even more, not to say that he didn't have an input with recruiting and he wasn't a really, really hard worker along with Jimmy Faraday as recruiters, but I think it's going to be a good thing for Chris. And Bobby Jordan, very, very energetic, very well-connected recruiter. Again, things fell through with Matt Brady. We'll see what happens with some of the, the off-the-bench roles here. I wouldn't be totally surprised if they bring in a guy with AAU ties, and that's the type of thing I think you'd want to see. You guys, thoughts on the staff? Anything you want to add?
Kaden, did you say
Yeah, I think it's a good staff. Like you, John, I think it's good to keep Chris Clark. At least you have that, familiarity with, the university. And I think Michael Hugger is a guy with head coaching experience. He's been there and done that. And although Arthur Johnson talked about how yesterday in one of the breakout sessions that his inexperience as a head coach wasn't really a factor, I think it's still nice that you have a guy there that had an above 500 record at Bowling Green, was a top assistant at Miami. He's got a good track record. And he's done some recruiting in Philly as well. And then John, like you mentioned, Bobby Jordan, he's also been, from the area, has that Temple connection because of Dwayne Killing. So I think they did a really good job. And I don't think, for a first staff, I think it's, all you could have asked for.
Bobby Jordan, I was supposed to call him Bobby Fisher. Bobby Jordan, I'm just glad he's on the staff so we can finally figure out what Bobby Jordan can do at Temple, because we've been hearing about Bobby Jordan at Temple for a long time.
Yeah.
Before he went down to IMG, before he even came back up into the college game, he's kind of been one of those rumored oh yeah, the spot that went to Jimmy on Aaron's staff was Bobby Fisher. Bobby Jordan was very clearly in the mix there. Javon and Caden, do you know who Bobby Fischer is?
No.
No, he's an old chess player. Very famous. Terrible person. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's interesting. I am very curious to see what Chris Clark's going to be able to do with like more of like an energetic coach. Because I mean, in the end, like regardless of how you want to coach a team, like assistant wise, and how you want to recruit and how you want to use the portal and what you want to do to get guys, you can't do that without the support of your head coach. So like if your head coach is like, no, we're going to do things the way we did it, so and so, like there's only so much you can do. And like it'll be nice to see him just like, okay, you let the restrictor plate off. Let's see what you can do. I can't tell you I was super familiar with Huger prior to the last couple of weeks once it became pretty obvious that he was going to come to Temple. But just like on paper, that makes sense to me. Like Power 5 assistant, former head coach, regionally local. Like it checks all the boxes of somebody you would want for like a first year head coach. And then now that Matt Brady's not coming, I'm going to be particularly curious as to like, do they tap the Huger well there, where like Huger had 3 assistants at Bowling Green? Or any of them going to be off the roll guys? Are you going to go the AAU route with somebody like Brandon Williams or somebody from Team Final or something like that? Like, I think the staff is a B+, A- right now. I think it's legitimately pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe fans will start the Andre Noble chatter again, or I'll go on a Miguel Boca Chica campaign again.
You've been on a Miguel Boca Chica campaign for a minute.
Or Deontay Christmas can restart his campaign or something like that.
Yeah, that's also cute. I mean, look, to his credit, McKee did stuff like that too, right? Like Jalen Bond, Ryan Brooks, they were all like graduate managers underneath him. Like he tried to keep that like pipeline going of former athletes. So like, I'll be curious like if Fisher does that with a Cleef Wyatt or a Deontay Christmas or somebody like that.
Yeah, Leaf was the next one I was getting to.
Yes, at Westchester.
Yeah. This second part of this question, John, I wanted
to switch this one around for you too, because I think there was some good conversation about this on our message board, and that part again, just to restate this question, what do you think about Fisher's mindset to becoming a high 3-point shooting team? I think, and again, this is what it is for right now. I think when fans hear that at first, they think, well, isn't that exactly what Aaron McKee said when he got here? Play loose. We want to push the tempo. I do think that Adam, and then I'll kind of defer this to you, Javon. I think Adam did a better job of explaining yesterday what he meant by that. I think there were a few people on our message board who said like, well, I don't know. That sounds like there's no structure on offense. I don't know that I really like took it that way. I think he did a better job of explaining what he meant by that, but I will defer to you on this one, Javon.
So he's got the track record for this. Yes, Penn State set their school record for, I want to say threes made this year, and I think he said attempted threes in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's cool. However, the whole I don't want point guards, I don't want shooting guards, I don't want small forwards, power forward, centers. I want 5 basketball players.
Sort of cliche, right?
Yeah, and I hate that crap in today's basketball. Listen, the bottom line is, despite what Jalen Rose may say to Skip Bayless, the positions are there for a reason. You need a facilitator. You need an isolation scorer. You need a catch and shoot guy that can defend. You need someone who can rebound, stretch the floor, and get his hands dirty down low. And you need somebody who can finish at the rim and protect the rim and rebound. Okay. You need real centers. You need space out power forwards. You need a 3-and-D wing. You need an isolation scoring wing. You need a facilitator at the point guard spot. I'm not a fan of, let's go ahead and put Zach Hicks at the center and let him go bombs away. I'm sorry. You're going to lose some basketball games like that. There's big men named Adama Sanogo and Hunter Dickinson roaming the country, okay? And Hunter Dickinson, wink, wink, I'm pretty sure he's probably going down to Maryland. So, guys in the region that you can look to, and it's like, oof, you're going to need some big bodies, okay? Like a Jamil Reynolds.
Sanogo shoots threes.
Yeah, but like he predominantly works on the block. You know where I'm going at, Kyle. I've got no problem with big men that can step out. Oh, I love me a Kristaps Porzingis, but like, get me. I love me an Embiid. I love me a Nikola Jokic.
It can't be the staple of their game. It can be an accessory. I get that.
Having a Jamil Reynolds is a pretty good thing to have. Keep your 6'10", 6'11" guy on the block, and then let him step out some once he starts going. But no, you're still going to need a big, Adam. You don't need Jalen Pickett guarding the big man, because trust me, I watched that Purdue game. It didn't go your way for too long. I watched a few Penn State games. That's not always the best. There's some teams like a Tulane who doesn't know how to defend that you can get away with it more. There's some small teams out there like I don't know if I'd call Florida Atlantic small, but they're not the biggest team in the world
They have
either.
what's his name? What from Texas Tech? The Russian.
Yeah,
Bolden.
but
Bolden,
there's some teams you can get away with it for, and I've got no problem with it. That's situational coaching. That's great, and I trust his basketball mind enough to believe that he knows that. Just don't get carried away with the positionless basketball crap, because the bottom line is there's no such thing as positional basketball. You can give me a team that you think is successful and it's positionless, and I can shut that argument down immediately.
Yeah, I have no qualms with, hey, we're going to let it rain from three and we're going to shoot a lot of threes, because like there's a lot of teams that win that way, right?
Yeah.
Like Penn State almost won the Big Ten. UConn shoots a lot of threes. I think FAU was like top 15 in the nation in shooting threes. Like all that stuff is fine.
FAU made it so far in the tournament. They couldn't protect the ball to save their lives, but the three ball got them all the way to the Final Four. So no, you use it, definitely.
The difference is you got to make them, though. Because like Temple this year was top 60 in the nation in shooting threes. They shot a lot of threes. They were like 110th in making threes because they were just volume 3-point shooters that were shooting like 31%. Like if you're telling me like, hey, look, as a team, we're going to shoot 37, 38, 40% from three, but we're going to shoot a lot, then like, great, you're going to win a lot of games. There's also teams out there that we just went to the Final Four with shooting no threes. Like San Diego State was like bottom third in the nation in shooting threes. Same with Miami, which is interesting because Larinaga kind of shifted away from that once Fisher left. I'm fine with it. I understand why people are attracted to it. I mean, analytically, right, it makes more sense. But yeah, you got to get guys that can make threes first. It'll be more curious of, I think if you're Zach Hicks, you're kind of like, I want to shoot threes, but I just dealt with 2 years of this. Well, let's just be all flowy and hope the ball gets to Zach thing. Like, I want you to run some set plays to get me open. So I'll be curious what they do in the half court.
I'm glad you said those two words, set and plays, because he said something that sent me to basketball heaven yesterday. He said, we'll have some plays. And we'll have sets, but I want it to the point where these guys learn how to play the game of basketball and they can get into their sets by themselves and
without
I don't
looking
have to
over
call
at me.
plays
Yeah.
all game long.
Yeah.
Thank God. Speaking my language right there. Lord have mercy. I feel like there's so many so-called basketball coaches out there right now who don't understand. You're supposed to teach your guys the game to the point where you don't have to be on the sideline calling plays all game long. Pat Riley had it right. I'm just let y'all learn how to play. And when we get in the squeeze, then I'll tell you what to go to. Oh, that spoke volumes to me. I was in heaven when I heard that.
Well, I think that was the part. I think that's the part that has to go hand in hand with this answer. I don't think he was talking about just letting them loose. Like that part where he's like, I don't want my guys to have to constantly be looking over at me. So we did have one last basketball mailbag question here before we finish things out with some football talk. From Fontaine Street to you. Didn't you live on Fontaine Street, Kyle?
I sure did.
Is
16 was I 1609? That's my current address. What the hell?
Do you have another account on L-Scoop?
What the hell was I 1609? I was 6. I think I was 1609. I should probably know this. I lived there for a year.
Nevertheless,
it was not 1609.
Kyle has something in common potentially with Fontaine Street to you, one of our loyal subscribers. What's it going to take for the administration to openly and publicly discuss
1629? I lived at 1629, in case you're wondering.
1629 Fontaine Street. So maybe Fontaine Street to you, maybe you and Kyle can meet up at some point.
I think actually, I don't think he subscribes anymore. A subscriber once revealed to us on our boards that he rented the same house as me in college. He was like, oh, I lived on Fontaine Street. What number were you? I was like, 1629. He's like, oh, crap, me too. Like, a couple generations apart, we lived in the same house.
Well, again, his question, what's it going to take for the administration to openly and publicly discuss NIL? Well, I think a couple things here. You have a head coach now, a new head coach who openly and publicly discussed it yesterday. If you are of the opinion that Temple got off to a very slow start with it, fine, totally hear you on that. I think they're starting to become a lot more intentional with it now, tweeting stuff about it, tweeting direct links to how you can get involved with a collective. I mean, I think they're heading in that direction unless I'm missing something here.
No, you're right. You got it. I mean, they put the links to contact the players for NIL opportunities on the website.
I think
they're running fun commercials at the Liacouras Center. Yeah.
I mean, I also think too that, I think that Adam and Arthur Johnson did a good enough job of kind of hedging things where they talk about NIL, they're acknowledging it, but they're also saying like, look, we want guys here. We know that's part of the game. We'll address it, but we also want guys here for reasons beyond that. We have to coach these guys up. We have to develop them. We were having some conversations with people who were in the game yesterday who were talking about how some of these guys are getting dollar promises that are not adding up at other schools. And it's still a slippery slope where they'll talk to somebody and a kid will sign up and say, hey, I thought I was getting XYZ here. And they get there and it doesn't pan out the way they wanted to. So I think when Adam Fisher and Arthur Johnson say, like if Arthur Johnson says, hey, NIL wasn't like the chief focus of our interview, instead of being a hyperactive fan and saying, oh my God, that's terrible, I think you have to kind of take that for what it's worth and say it has to go beyond that. But I don't think they're really putting their heads in the sand about it. Let's close things up. Oh, go ahead.
I think there's two things there. I think one, the more important thing is what they say behind closed doors. I think like not saying like they need to go to a booster and be like, you need to give us X amount of money to keep this person. But I think it's more just like, if I'm a booster of Temple and I'm like not getting that call from action from somebody in administration or the coaching staff or anything like that, and I'm just hearing from people at the Tough Fund or something, then like there's less demand for me to actually do it. So like it sounds like they're getting more supportive of things like that. And Fisher's more proponent for that. I think the way that Temple successfully uses NIL is not going to be like, we came across X amount of money and we bought this 4-star player and now he's here. I think the way that Temple has to use NIL is, we got this guy based upon sheer recruiting. We developed him into like an all-conference level player, and we were able to get him enough money to prevent him from being poached. Is I think the way that Temple has to kind of like work. Is like, let's pretend that everything was neutral and there was no coaching staff, and Damian Dunn was starting to hear rumbles from people, and like Temple was able to like, hey, the Tough Fund's kind of able to help you out, and blah blah, and we were able to keep you here instead of you just becoming, hey, there's no resistance, and we're literally just a AAA team, and anytime a player becomes good, they're just going to go. So I don't want to set the picture that Temple's ever going to be out there like winning bidding wars for 5-star guys coming out of high school, because I don't see it unless some miracle billionaire shakes free like out of nowhere and decides he wants to play like GM. But otherwise it's just like, hey, you gotta be enough to at least be competitive in it to be able to keep the guys that like you developed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how it's supposed to be used in general. That's where this thing should have went. Like, no, go do your own clean recruiting. Actually do your job instead of buying a kid and selling them on some false hope. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, you're better than you're better than the rest of the country thought. But guess what? We saw it in you. We recruited you. We believed in you from day one. So take us at a discount to stay home.
Right. And like we love you, and we want you to be looked after. Like, we don't want you to do this for free. Like, we're able to try to help ends meet. But like in the end, like, yeah, there should be like a hometown discount where it's like, nah, like, okay, maybe get to like 65-70% of what this random school out west is giving me.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I don't think that's the reality with most.
Most hell no.
No. Let's close out the pod this week talking about some football. Again, as I said at the outset of the show, things have obviously been, for good reason, very basketball-centric on the pod over the last few weeks, with the coaching search and Adam Fisher being hired. There is a Jerry and White spring football game Saturday. We've been continuing to cover spring football. Again, a lot of good content on the site. Got a story up about Dwan Mathis, which I think we have a mailbag question about that. Johnny Zwizlak just did a story on Dwan Mathis and what he's doing at wide receiver.
What's his
now.
name?
John Zwizlak. He's been sending stories over to us as John Zwizlak and not Johnny Zwizlak. Although Javon said that maybe it's John, capital E.
No. Like his name. That's like a real thing. Like, it's a wordplay thing. His name is John E. Zwizlak.
Well, that is a real.
He goes by Johnny. It's a good wordplay thing. He didn't even notice it, so I pointed it out to him.
Oh, so like Chuck E. Cheese. Like Chuck E. Cheese.
And now everybody calls him Chucky, you know?
What's his middle name?
Should I put his government information out there like that?
His government information. It's not like you're sharing.
But when we're done recording, I'll tell you his full government. But
Earl, Edmund, Edgar, Eric.
You're not breaking me. You're not breaking me on this one.
Okay, how many letters?
I'm not giving you any.
How many letters?
I will tell you.
How many? I'm just going to find out. Let's see if I can just sleuth it.
Yeah, when we finish recording, I'll let you know. But I don't know, all of our subscribers. We might have some creeps out there who try to take his identity or something.
Javon will go on rants about certain things, but he's very, very protective about Johnny's Whizlax.
Yeah.
I can appreciate it. All right.
By the way, before our subscribers, though, for all of you who keep coming up to me, John, Caden, whenever Kyle leaves the bunker,
Never.
saying how much you love.
If anybody comes up to me and tells me they're a fan of Owl Scoop, I just leave. I'm done with this situation.
But yeah, for those of you who do it to me, John and Caden, we appreciate it. It makes our days. Continue with the support and the subscriptions and all that stuff, and keep telling friends to tell friends to subscribe to our content.
Wait, Kyle, isn't that's not, well, I'm kind of like,
of course that's not the case. I'm just as big of an ego, if not bigger than anybody.
Well, what's the story? And I think you've shared it on the pod before. It wasn't like someone said you were from Owl Scoop. You and Meg were at Fox and the Hound, and this girl said, "Are you Kyle Gauss?" And you were like, "Oh yes, I am."
Did you just ask me to tell a story and then told the entire story?
I told part of it.
I was on some like TV spot or something like that day, and then we went to the Fox and Hound, and a girl came up and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Are you Kyle Gauss?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And she said, You dropped your ID. It was on the ground and handed me my driver's license. Obviously was not watching like 6 ABC or whatever the hell I was on. I was on like something that was like big enough that I'm like, oh, maybe some people saw me, and then no.
That would crush my ego. Like some chick just comes up to me at the bar. Hey, are you Javon Edmonds? I'm like, well, yeah, yes, I am. Here's your ID.
She's like, okay. She's like, I hear that you hate all types of beer. And she just starts roasting you at the bar.
Chances of that happening to Caden are high to very high. Caden, as we know, drops the contents of his wallet more than anybody we know, right?
Oh yeah, we talked about that at breakfast today. Just like you've dropped your debit card probably like 6 times around with John. John is very anti-debit card. I've realized
you're not supposed to use your debit card.
You're not supposed to use your debit card. Your debit card, that's your money. If you lose your debit card and they take it out, like that money doesn't just come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Credit card, they'll just dispute the charges.
And that's their money. That's our financial 101.
They should be building credit. Should be building credit anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, Adam Shire, Temple Special Teams Coordinator and tight ends coach, spoke today. Again, that there's been a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday schedule to the spring football media availability. We've got Max's story will be up on the site talking about today's news and notes from that. Reiterated the Cam Price as of now is the team's place kicker, and as we expected, it looks like the Purdue transfer Chris Van Eckeren will be the kickoff specialist. Adam was talking about how Van Eckeren was, I think, 63% on touchbacks a year ago at Purdue, and said that would limit other teams' return opportunities. So that was a priority for them in the portal. And again, we've got stories on Dwan Mathis, a ton of spring football coverage throughout these last several weeks. We're not going to delve too much into this, and we got a mailbag question from Pat. So, again, let's provide some context here. I know people are looking forward to the Cherry and White game. I don't know how great the weather is going to be on Saturday, but guys, what are we reasonably looking for out of Saturday? Like, other than, we'll ask for player health, updates, injuries, keeping an eye out for former players who come to the game. But knowing that the team, and I think fans sometimes need a reminder on this, that the team doesn't show much. There's a reason why we don't get access to watching spring ball. We used to on certain occasions. You could see who was running out first, second team. We've talked in the past about how a lot of guys will put up good numbers in the spring game, and it doesn't always translate into August and the following season. But
Sylvester Mathis.
Yeah, Sylvester Mathis. Yeah, had a good game. But what can we reasonably look for out of covering Saturday, knowing that both the offense and the defense are going to be watered down? They're not going to show much. What are you guys looking for out of Saturday? What can we glean from Saturday, if anything?
No, like you said, who's healthy? If Quincy Patterson has learned how to throw a better football, if
playing some special teams, by the way.
Yeah, if Dwan Mathis is a better route runner, how the alumni are doing and what they're up to, if the security guard has learned who Kurt Warner is by now, if Quincy Roche's name is back on the number 9 plaque in Edinburgh Olsen Hall, and I have to try that barbecue truck this year. If it's there again, I have to get it, because that is probably the worst thing I've done to myself in the past year, is not treat myself to that barbecue truck last year.
Did you eat a hot dog instead?
I ate the free food, but like that barbecue truck smelled so good, I just swore it was going to be open by the time we left. And it was, but it wasn't. Like,
wasn't there hail? Didn't it hail last year? There was hail.
Yes, it definitely did.
Yes.
It hailed. Yeah. I have an umbrella for it this time.
Is it going to rain again, or?
No, it's not supposed to as of right now. It's going to be overcast though.
Yeah, overcast. Ugh.
Overcast conditions here at Edward Golson Hall for Temple football.
Yeah.
It's 2023 spring game.
It's going to be it's 82 degrees right now. It's going to be 52 degrees on Saturday. So
I'm Javon Edwards with Caden Steele, bringing you all the coverage
back to you at the desk, Kyle.
Glorified practice.
Yeah.
But before that, back to John and Kyle in the studio.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think there will be a little bit more to look for this year. You've got a staff that's heading into its second season. There's a little bit more familiarity with the roster, with their players. Ton of mid-year guys that you can look for. And again, all you can really look for is like good individual talent. Does a guy like Kyle Williams make a cut and make somebody miss? Does EJ Wilson flash on a player or two in the offensive backfield? What does the offensive line look like? They've been very banged up. They were really banged up this past season. What does Kamar Wilcoxon look like? I think you're really just looking to see like individual flashes of individual play. And then it's just trying to see what you can get from the coaches after the game. We've been told we'll talk to Stan Drayton and a handful of players. And then you, like I said, you try to catch up with some alums, but coaches are aware of the fact that some programs in certain conferences will send people out almost like old baseball, like bird dog scouts, where they'll say, hey, go to this team's spring game to see what you're seeing. Tell us what you're looking at. So they will be, I'd be surprised. I think they have things very watered down. I think we were talking about before we started recording. I think John Kincaid and Andrew Salchunas are going to be guest coaches this year from 97.5 The Fanatic. That's a nice segue into our football mailbag question here from our friend Pat Egan from 97.5 The Fanatic, who's on the John Kincaid Morning Show. He's got a two-parter, as he always does. How is Dewan Mathis looking at wide receiver? I mean, he talked this week, and again, Johnny Zawislak has a story, or John Zawislak, Johnny Zawislak, whatever we want to call him, Jack Zawislak.
Can we just keep it to Johnny? We don't have to turn this into a bigger thing than it is. He's still little Johnny, the innocent guy,
An entire Springford commencement ceremony to try to get his middle name before realizing I was listening to the wrong class. I was listening to the long.
Your volume's down. I can't hear you.
Well, he said, for those who didn't hear, Kyle said he just listened to a full Springford, Johnny's high school alma mater, commencement ceremony just for it to be the wrong one.
That is
He's that desperate to find out Johnny's middle name.
That is why, ladies and gentlemen, Kyle Gauss is one of the best reporters out there. He takes one nugget that sticks in his crawl and he says, I'm going to find out. I'm going to get an answer here.
But not like stuff like that. Kyle shouldn't even be a reporter. Like, go join the police department. We need some good detectives out there. Because, that type of snooping is, I think you took the wrong calling in life, Kyle. Granted, I know you want to come home and see your kids and wife.
I could see Kyle in like a buddy cop movie where he's just telling jokes and throwing donuts around.
I mean this in the nicest way. I am, of the four of us. Can you guys hear me now, by the way?
Yes.
I am, of the four of us, the least likely to be a cop. Let's just put that out there. Of that, though, I just went through, the entire 2020 class. Turns out his class of 2021, I ain't doing it. I'm not doing it again. You would think a last name was Z, it would be easy to find that. No, they start doing 2 at a time, different parts of the yearbook. I'm not doing it.
I was wondering what you were doing. You had your hand in your ear.
Because I was trying to listen to you guys while also.
You looked like you were in an 80s recording studio where well, I need more bass there. I need more treble. Let's turn
My girl wants to party all the time.
You
gave those vibes off. Yeah.
I'm going to find
that's Caden's favorite song. Caden knows Eddie Murphy's singing history very well. He has no idea.
Yeah, Caden, did you know Eddie Murphy had a few songs?
No idea.
No idea.
Wow. Oh, come on, man. I get disappointed by somebody new around here every day.
I mean,
that song came out.
Eddie Murphy is a singer.
That song came out before the prostitute, right? Right? I believe so.
To be fair, I wouldn't have expected Caden to know that.
Party All the Time was what, 84?
It wasn't until later in the 80s they got busted.
Just like I wouldn't expect anybody your age to know that Bruce Willis recorded that Seagram's Golden Wine Cooler song, which was also
you've sent that to me not for a long time. You haven't sent it to me in years, but I think you sent it to me 3 different times. Once over the course of 2 years, for me. You were like, "Here's this." I was like, "Yeah, we've had full conversations about this, John."
It's my commitment to just be.
He can't talk anymore.
I know, it's a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, there's no good segue out of that. Dewan Mathis at wide receiver. I think it's worth noting at the very least that, and again, we know that if you wanted to transfer again to an FBS school, you would have had to sit out a year. if he was going to say, oh, I started off with a super highly recruited quarterback. Things didn't pan out that way. Could have transferred down potentially to the FCS level, but he's still at Temple, which I think says something for him. He is a heck of an athlete. He appears to be working at it. I think that's a minor win for the coaching staff. And if they can make him a 15, 20 catch guy, I think you've done your job there in terms of retaining a really, really good athlete on the roster and somebody who still wants to be here. I mean, he's saying all the right things. We'll see more in August, but getting him a full off season at the position can't really be a bad thing.
I thought his one quote was honestly like refreshingly honest, where he said, like, I've been trying quarterback for a while and it just wasn't going good. Like, it wasn't going well. I'm like, oh, that's like a pretty big like revelation to realize, like, the position you've been playing your entire life, like, maybe you're not cut out for it. I do wish he was like 25 pounds heavier, because if he does become a focal point or a part of this offense at 6'5", 6'6", 210 pounds, he's gonna take some hits. Like, he needs to put some muscle on at that level. And he had a quote about that too, where he said, like, I'm not used to getting hit. I didn't get hit for my entire life, and now I'm hit every play. So,
yeah.
You want to talk about a hit? Jack Nicklaus took another hit to his legacy today, saying he will.
What a golfing segue.
He will vote for former President Donald J. Trump again if he's the best candidate.
Who's asking Jack Nicklaus about this?
I don't know, but Marcus Hayes just wrote about it in the Inquirer.
You know what sucks is, like, up until Twitter, I'd say, so 2008, 2010, people could just be idiots in their own basement. Like, you could have shitty opinions, and I don't care. Like, as long as you're nice to me in person, like, I don't care what your opinion is. It's awful, but I don't care. And now everybody's got a microphone, and everybody's this, and like, Jack Nicklaus, here's this in front of your face. Of course, Jack Nicklaus is an old guy that lives in Florida now, right? Like, of course he's voting for Trump. What are we talking about?
Yep.
Everyone has a microphone. You know who won't have a microphone?
Caden.
Oh, no, I was going to say Declan and Johnny if they keep asking to be on the scoop, but
That's what I'm saying. It's every time. It's like, do you remember, were you guys too young for The Game, which was like, if you thought of the game, you lost the game? Do you remember that in like middle school? Was that a thing?
No.
It was when I was in middle school. And the whole concept was you're playing this game that you're not supposed to think of. And then when you think about it, you lost the game and you start all over. And it was very stupid. But what we're going to do is, the longer they go without asking for it, the closer and closer they're going to get to the finish line. But once they ask for it, back in the pool, just back to like the pool of interns of who's going to fill those seats. I could get a Sam back here. Sam Cohn's got nothing going on. He'll find time for us.
Damn, Lord have mercy. Kyle, that was
Baltimore's. Is that a city? I don't know. Like, what's going on down there? He's got time to come talk to us.
Kyle knows what he's doing here, trying to rile up everybody.
It's like a third tier mid-Atlantic city, right? So, like, if anything, to come up to like a top tier mid-Atlantic city, he should want to come talk to us.
It's just like
look, am I saying Philadelphia is like New York? Like, no, but like, it's better than Boston. It's better than Baltimore. It's like,
Kyle,
come see us.
Remember when
come take some wax in AAA?
When Javon got fired up about analytics and we were done recording, and Kyle's like, I knew what I was doing.
No, I don't recall that.
Yeah, that definitely happened.
That doesn't sound like something I would do.
Well, it sounds exactly like something you would do.
I'm a meditator.
Oh yeah,
meditator and mediator.
Yes. Go Pat's second question here to close things out. Go to Easter candy. Also trash Easter candy. Something that the bunny would catch hands for delivering to your basket. So, what's your least favorite Easter candy? I think is what Pat is asking here.
I feel like Junior Mints. I'm not like a huge fan.
I like Junior Mints.
I like Junior Mints.
I also don't think of those as an Easter candy. Are those an Easter candy?
No, those could be like a Christmas Eve treat.
So, what classifies as an Easter candy?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Rattle some off.
Jelly beans,
the Reese's eggs, and the jelly
Reese's eggs, jelly beans,
the marshmallow peeps.
Peeps.
I think
Peeps might be the bad one.
Yeah, I can't do Peeps. I've tried.
What?
I just can't.
I like Peeps.
I feel like I can have like one Peep, and then I'm like, cool, done with this. Like, I'm not going to eat the sleeve of 7 Peeps.
Yeah, when I speak of these candies, I'm speaking from the mind of 8 and 9-year-old Javon, because I'm just not a candy person at all.
I mean, the Reese's eggs are good, but they're also like, Reese's Christmas trees are good. Like, Reese's anything is pretty much good. jelly beans, like it's hit or miss. Some jelly beans, like a lot of people go like cheap with the jelly beans because like this is just like the fodder of the Easter basket, and like that can sometimes be bad. But good jelly beans are good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Easter has a lower ceiling when it comes to candy. Like there's not some like great, like in food in general, there's not some like great Easter dish where you're like, well, this Easter ham just like knocked my boots off. But there's also, I think, a higher floor where there's not as much like potential like landmines of like that's just a terrible dish or that's a terrible candy.
Yeah, for me, Easter's more about the desserts. Like my family, oh man, the women of my family, God really did his thing with them because they can bake their asses off. And I'm talking.
I'm sure God appreciates that on Easter Sunday.
Pound cake, pineapple upside down cake, double chocolate cake, cheesecake. It's just, it's an abundance of options. It's just wonderful. Like, oh man,
I'm gonna eat 13 deviled eggs on Sunday. Is what's gonna happen.
Deviled eggs. Yeah,
like, I'm gonna eat 13 of them. Just pop, 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 and then that'll be that.
Some mac and cheese, some greens, some fried chicken.
When my grandparents were alive, it was ham, stuffed shells, manicotti, lasagna. There was like a pasta. There was like some sort of like Italian accompaniment too. Do they still do Cadbury eggs?
Yeah, they still exist, but I think they made them smaller, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like the Peeps. I could never get into the Peeps. Just like my dad, God rest his soul, worked for Spangler Candy for years, and they made the circus peanuts, and I was like, Dad, I can't. And anytime he found somebody that actually liked circus peanuts, he would just be so delighted.
What are circus peanuts?
What are they?
Yeah.
You ever seen they were like literal peanuts that were like different colors, like orange, yellow, and they were like, I don't know how you really describe. Todd Zalecki listens to our podcast every once in a while. Philly's beat reporter. His mom likes them. They're like, I don't know. They're like bad, sugary, foamy peanuts that have like food coloring in them. If you Google them, you'll know once you see them.
Oh yeah, I think okay, I guess I've seen these like in the aisle at grocery store.
Yeah,
but no, I can't say I've ever had these. They look like packing peanuts. Like that's like what I would use to make sure like a piece of equipment got shipped correctly from my dungeon.
Dad, if you're listening to the scoop from heaven, I apologize. Can't get in the circus peanuts, although I don't think they ever ended up in anybody's Easter baskets. And
like Whoppers, Whopper does a good Easter thing. They like Whopper eggs. Yeah.
They do Whopper eggs?
Yeah, they do Whopper eggs, I believe.
Yeah. Anyway, that concludes the Easter portion of this podcast.
That concludes our services for this Easter Sunday.
Yes.
May God be with you all.
Also, I should say happy Passover to all of our Jewish listeners who may or may not be listening to the scoop right now. I hope you guys all have a wonderful holiday weekend again. And thank you for your support of the scoop. Our numbers have been really, really good over the last couple of months and steadily rising and increasing. So big thank you to all of our listeners out there.
Here's a good thing that came from Circus Peanuts.
What's that?
Lucky Charms were created because of them. Because a General Mills employee chopped them in and put them into a bowl of Cheerios and said, wait a minute, this works. And they created Lucky Charms.
That just blew my mind. I had no idea.
And neither did I. Which is, obvious because I didn't know what Circus Peanuts were 10 minutes ago. But but it's on there. Apparently it's proven lore.
Another little pleasant.
The more you know. The rainbow.
Yeah.
You...
Anyway, thank you all for listening. We will be back with you next week with more spring football news, wrap up the Cherry and White game, any additional news on Adam Fisher's staff or any portal developments of people coming and going. Again, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. We will talk to you soon.